Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the 8th round of the Spilimbergo Open, which is being held in Italy. Now, Levy Rozman, the famous YouTuber and aspiring Grandmaster candidate, won an immortal game yesterday. He sacrificed a queen, he pushed a bunch of pawns down the queen side, and he won probably the greatest game of his entire chess career. So we're back with round number 8, Levy playing with the black pieces. Now, one of the issues with playing open tournaments is that even if you're having a good result or an okay result, you generally don't start playing against the absolute best players. So, Levy playing with the black pieces against a 2290 Azerbaijani kid. Now, this again, very dangerous pairing for Levy. He's not playing against people who are past their peaks, people who are in their 20s or 30s, but he's playing a lot of these kids. Now, additionally, Azerbaijan is one of those countries, I would say, alongside Turkey and Iran, where the kids are improving very quickly. The kids are all right, as the famous saying goes, but they're very, very dangerous. And I think that there are many of these kids who will go on to become IMs and GMs down the road. All right, let's jump right into the action. So Levy is playing as Suleiman Suleimani, and the game starts with the move knight to f3. Levy plays move d5, we get g3, and now he plays bishop g4. Now, you will notice that Levy and his opponents, generally with white and black, are playing a lot of these very hyper-modern setups. You have knight f3 and g3. Levy has also been playing knight f3 and e3, so a lot of similar setups. Of course, yesterday, Levy did play g3, and his opponent went g6, but today, Levy with the black pieces plays bishop g4. We get the move bishop g2. Levy plays move c6, creating the classic connect 3 in the center of the board, and now his opponent decides to castle the king. Levy goes knight d7 here, and we get this move h3. Now, this is really the first critical moment of the game because white has two major options here, or I should say three. White can try to play c4 and attack the black center here. White can play d4 here to stop black from playing this move e5 because you would lose a pawn and prevent the big black center, or white can play this move h3 here, forcing black to trade away the bishop immediately. Now, Levy takes the knight and he goes e5 here. He gets the classic big black center here with the pawns on e5 and d5. And now Suleiman plays this move bishop g2. Here Levy goes knight gf6, and now we get this move d4 being played. Now, d4 is definitely a move that I'm not a huge fan of. Normally, when black builds this big center like this and has given away the two b's so that white has this bishop pair, you usually want to play a move like d3, bishop d6, knight d2, castles, and then you play this move e4, building your own big white center. Suleiman, however, plays the move d4, and now Levy decides to trade the pawns. Now, Levy would love to go e4 and create the classic connect 4, but this is not that game. You don't simply win if you create the pawn chain. Now, if you go e4 here, white will play c4. Let's just say you play bishop e7. White gets knight c3 here, and immediately there's a lot of pressure on the center of the board. If you were to castle, for example, white can now go queen b3, and suddenly black is really struggling here. There's a lot of pressure on the center of the board against all these pawns, and black could end up losing the game. So, Levy decides to trade on d4. We get queen takes pawn, and now he plays the move bishop c5. A very important move here because if white can get in this move c4 and get rid of the big black center, there are no pawns here on d5 or e5 anymore, and you end up in just some regular position. I'm just going to set it up something like this, for example. White is actually a little bit better with the two b's on both of these diagonals in the long run. White can eventually try to play for e4 and f4 and e5. This is, of course, not a huge advantage. At the very top level, it would be significant because of the bishop combo, but nonetheless, it's a very pleasant position for white to play. So, Levy goes bishop c5, we get queen to f4, castles, and now his opponent plays the move c4. Now, what you will notice here is that Levy has finished his development, whereas white still has three pieces at home, the bishop, the knight, and the rook. So white is trying to finish the development very, very quickly here. If black can create pressure before all these pieces get in the game, you could potentially claim an advantage. So, Levy plays rook e8, we got pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, and here the move queen c4 is played, which presses the knight on d5, but also very importantly guards his pawn on e2 from being captured. Here Levy plays move queen to e7, and in this position he's both guarding the bishop on c5, but he also is still threatening to take the pawn on e2. Now, this is a very enterprising move from Levy. He correctly understands that he needs to be very energetic because white has these three pieces which are not in the game, so you want to try and bring all the boys to the party immediately before white has the time. Now, the issue with queen e7 is that white can play the move which occurs in the game, which is bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, and queen takes pawn. Now, temporarily here, white has one extra pawn. If you do the count, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So white has one extra pawn, but three pieces not in the game yet, and so Levy has chances to take advantage of that. So we get the move knight to f6, and now we have this move queen g2 being played by Suleiman. Now this move is not a very good move according to the computer, but I think from a human perspective, it's actually the best move here. Now, if white were to play this move queen c4, trying to guard the pawn temporarily, but also avoid hanging this because you would win the bishop, black then has rook a c8 here, and if you aren't careful and you play a move like e4, for example, there's bishop takes f2, and we reach the classic fossil where you have to take the bishop, and then you lose the queen. Additionally, here there's the move queen to f5, which is also a very logical move. Black still cannot take the pawn because the bishop hangs, but after knight to e4, e3, g6, queen f3, and then a move like rook a d8, black is actually doing very well here because white still has not developed his pieces. Additionally, the bishop is hemmed in here. There's no scope, and you don't have the fianchetto light square b either around the white king. So black is doing quite well here, which is why I really like this decision to go queen g2, because black has no choice here but to basically capture the pawn. Now, computer will say that knight to e4 is the best move. This is a move that I think, frankly, is very hard to play as a human because you simply see knight to d2 or knight to c3, and in both of these cases, after takes, queen e2, and queen b7, white is simply up a pawn. However, black is better here due to the dark square b on c5 being so powerful. This white dark square b, not very active here. Black controls all the open lanes, massive threats on the diagonal, and in general, black is very marginally better. Now, again, very hard to complain about this because without knowing the evaluation, you're not going to go for this. And even looking at this optically, to me, as a top player, I don't really feel like white should be much worse here. So, after queen g2, Levy plays the logical move. He plays queen takes pawn, but now this gives white time to develop the knight, attacking the queen. This is what we call tempo. Black is going to have to waste time moving the queen, and after bishop to g5, now suddenly white has completed all the development, and just like that, the advantage or any chance of getting an advantage is gone. Now, the computer thinks that after queen to h5 here, black is still marginally better after, say, bishop to f4, bishop to d4, something like rook a d1 takes, and I guess b6 here, and black is very, very slightly better simply because white has the split pawns on the queen side. So you get like rook e1, rook a c8. Maybe there's a queen a5 idea. You're trying to hit the pawns on c3 and a2, but overall, it's very, very minimal. Levy goes queen c2 instead. Now we get to move bishop g5. Very good decision by white. You finish the development. You also, again, are using the tempo here. You're attacking this knight on f6, and black has to do something about it. So Levy ends up playing this move bishop to d4. If I were playing with black pieces here in Levy's shoes, knowing that you really need to try and win, I probably would play this move knight d7, and this is a little bit of gamba here by black, trying to create some complications. It's not the best move, but after queen b7 and queen f5, you're attacking the bishop, you're attacking the pawn, they're knight e5, knight f3 ideas, and white is maybe marginally better if you play it perfectly after bishop f4, but with bishop b6 and knight c5, knight d3 incoming, there is a lot of counterplay for black, and I don't really think that black should be in any danger of losing the game. Now, this is very important because if you're giving up a material or you're trying to keep the game going, but you don't think there's any risk, then it's always worth it to play a move that might not be the absolute best move, but it keeps more pieces on the board. It keeps a chance alive for your opponent to make a mistake. But remember, this requires you perceiving the position or evaluating the position in a way that you don't think there's any danger of losing if you don't play the absolute best move. So, Levy instead plays the move bishop to d4 here. Now, this move is a completely reasonable move. Black guards the knight on f6. Worth pointing out, after queen b2, takes, and something like knight to a4, queen a3, takes, and queen b7. White is slightly better due to the pawns stacked on f7 and f6. Also, you might be afraid of knight to d5 here. You have all these ideas with the forks. You've got this bastion in the center. You have rook a b1 to hit the queen and the pawn, and it simply doesn't feel very good to play. So, Levy goes bishop d4, guards knight, avoids white from ruining his pawn structure. He also creates a classic wooden shield in the middle of the board. Game continues with this move bishop takes knight, Levy takes, and now his opponent Suleiman correctly plays this move queen takes b7. Now, unfortunately here for Levy, as you can tell, white's king is very safe on the king side. There are very minimal pieces left on the board. You really only have these pawns on the king side and then these pawns on b2, a2, and a7. And here the game is definitely trending towards a draw. Now, in this position, Levy plays this move bishop takes c3. And after bishop takes c3, the game simply ends immediately in a draw. Now, this is obviously a big disappointment here. What Levy could have tried to play was this move rook a b8, hitting the queen. But after queen takes pawn, if black isn't careful and you play queen takes b2, there's rook a b1, knight guards the rook, and suddenly there's this massive problem with your queen on b2, but also your rook on b8 as well. And after, say, bishop c3 takes, I guess bishop takes b2 and a4, white should be winning the game. So you can't take on b2 with the queen, which means you have to take with the rook, creating the double stack and trying to get some kebabs on the second rank. But now after rook fe1, trying to take advantage of ice skater threats on the back rank. Let's just say black goes rook b8 here, for example, and white plays rook ac1. The position is pretty balanced after queen to f5. White has this outside a2 pawn, but you have a weak h3 pawn. Not really a whole lot of play for either side. Probably the way the game would go is takes, something like king g2 here. And now after bishop c3, rook c3, check, king h2, and something like h6 or maybe even h5 here, with threats like rook e1 creating a mate, threats like rook e2 creating a kebab on the second, and having this very active wooden shield queen in the center of the board. White really doesn't have any chances to win the game. Levy ultimately decides that it's towards the end of the tournament. He doesn't want to risk missing something, which is why he plays move bishop c3, and the game simply ends immediately with a draw. Now, the way the game would have concluded most likely is after pawn takes bishop here, we would have gotten queen takes pawn. Something like rook c1 here, queen a5 maybe, something like, I don't know, rook c7 would hang a pawn. Probably something like rook c2, g6, h4, h5, and something like rook c1. And at this point, after king g7, both sides have the same number of pawns on the king side, same number of pawns on the queen side. Not really a whole lot going on here. And really, considering the level of the players being so equal, just not very exciting. And probably you would end up wasting a lot of time and energy for no reason here if you were playing from Levy's point of view with the black pieces or playing from the white perspective. So the game ends in a draw. Definitely a big disappointment for Levy to really not get any play. I mean, this game was not very rich, unlike the last couple of games, which have been very dynamic that Levy has played. So it ends in a draw. This means that Levy is now, I believe, on 5 points out of 8. He's still losing, I think, like 5 or 6 rating points. If he wins the final game, he'll probably break even. But definitely this game is just a little bit of a nothing burger. So definitely disappointing for the fans, but Levy still has a chance to win the last game, more or less break even, and it won't be such an unhappy ending for him. I should say it could maybe be a happy ending to make a joke. So it is what it is, but Levy is now on 5 points out of 8 as we head into the final round of the Spilimbergo Open. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the 8th round of Spilimbergo Open, which is being held in Italy. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with a recap after round number 9, which I believe Levy is playing later today, or maybe it's tomorrow, actually. It might just be one game today, but we will be back with another recap after the 9th round. I will obviously also do a recap from day 3 of the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz Tournament, which I am competing in, so stay tuned for a bunch of recaps, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very, very soon. Have a good night, everybody. Keep it real. Bye.